Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sip and Smoke podcast with myself and Billy. How are you doing, Billy?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. We've got another guest on the show today.
We
do you want to introduce them for us?
We have, yes, of course. So we have Alan Graham from Brightleaf today. Alan, how are you?
I'm very good. All the better for being here, enjoying a good cigar.
Just makes everything a little bit better, doesn't it?
It always makes it better.
100%. We appreciate you making the journey as well. I know it was a long journey.
No worries.
And,
it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
We're in the hot seat, really, because we don't ever have to travel to do this. So unfortunately, I guess I have to make a little bit of a journey down. But
wouldn't miss it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So we're going to be, last time I went straight into the guest. I didn't start on the cigar. So I think it's best that we bring it straight to the cigar. So what are we all sampling today? Starting with yourself, Alan?
I'm going for the Ancient Selection by Rocky Patel Robusto. Mm-hmm. Lovely medium, mild to medium cigar. Honduran wrapper, mixture of Nicaraguan and Honduran binder and filler. Available only at C.Gars and Termo shops. And really good value cigar. And it's tasting beautiful, the construction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic.
I remember when they first came in, we sat down and sampled one and it was like, this is just another one that Mitchell and, as I say, Rocky Patel have kind of just hit the nail on the head, haven't they? The blend is truly magnificent. So
it is.
Well, Mitchell doesn't put his name on anything that isn't good, so...
No, exactly.
100%. 100%.
What are you smoking or sampling? Sorry.
So I have the Hiram Solomon Fellowcraft Toro, and you've just dropped your ash.
Just dropped my ash all over my trousers.
It's not you for once.
I was going to say, that happens to me.
You couldn't make that one up.
Honestly, I always say there is absolutely no point in me ever having an ashtray on hand because I'm sitting there, I'm so involved in everything else that it just always goes either on me or on the floor, or on my shoes, or it's a bit of an annoying one, but we keep it moving.
Of course. So yeah, I'm sampling the Hiram Solomon Fellowcraft Toro. So this one's a little bit odd. So the filler is Jalapa, Ometepe, and Ligero Esteli. The binder is Indonesian Sumatra, which is interesting. You don't see Indonesian tobacco all too much. Mm-hmm. But then the wrapper says it's an Oscuro, but that's all it says. So what's...
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, looking at the colour, I'm not sure I would refer to it as an Oscuro.
Yeah, it doesn't seem dark enough.
It doesn't look quite dark enough, but it kind of has the properties of one. You know, a little bit of sweetness and so on. But it's a nice cigar.
I'm enjoying it so far, yeah.
So this is the first time you've sampled Hiram and Solomon, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I believe so, anyway. I mean,
yeah. To be honest, I can't remember you having one before.
I know you've had one.
Yeah, I think I've had a couple.
Do you remember which one you had?
I feel like it was the Master Mason. Just because the visual on that cigar, I mean, I really, really like dark wrappers. You know, the visual on that is a real dark wrapper. So.
I mean, it's quite a decent sized range with some absolute gems in. I was mentioning to you guys before, the Travelling Man Lancero is a particular favourite of mine.
Yeah.
But all good quality cigars.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I think I need to dive into all the more. You know, it's quite difficult from our point of view as like a retailer and things like that. We obviously have to sample so many across like a million different brands.
The cigars range.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
No,
you know,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's so vast.
Seems to be ever growing as well, which is obviously a great thing for business, great thing for you guys, and great for for the industry. Really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was also going to mention that this is based on the Freemasons, right?
It is, yes. So Foward and Romy, who run the company, Foward is a high up in the Masons, based in New Jersey, and they give quite a lot of money from the sale of the cigars to charity. They've even done cigars specifically for charities. Okay. And all of the theme is Masonic. So the Master Mason, the Travelling Man, Fellowcraft are references to Masonry.
That's quite a cool one because it's quite a niche. I say it's niche.
Yeah.
It's something that not a lot of products, not a lot of industries kind of focus on it too much. They don't.
No.
And, you know, Hiram and Solomon is based all around it. So it's quite cool to kind of give a nod to that.
It's quite secret, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, it's quite cool that they have something to show for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because they've got ranks, haven't they? Do the ranks?
Yeah, so, you know, there's also within the range the Grand Architect, who's the top. It's the god, if you like, and then the master mason and so on. They're all references to the levels as you travel up through. I'm not mason, so I don't really know that much detail around it, but I do know that, yes, they're references to different levels of masonry.
It's funny because, as I say, neither one of us are involved in any of it or anything like that, but we had a couple of guys coming to an event around about this time last year, and they happened to be a mason or however you say it, and they were talking about it, and they said, something about Hiram and Solomon. I was like, it's funny, we've actually got a cigar brand. And we went downstairs after the event and he was talking about it. He was like, these words all mean something. Yeah. And I was like, okay. Like, that makes more sense now. But
didn't tell us anything, though.
No, as I say, secrecy. And
but they do a lot of good, they raise a lot of money for charity, the Masons. And some great cigars have come out of it. So.
Exactly.
Do the ranks have anything to do with the strength profile or flavour profile of each cigar?
Not particularly, no. There are some strong high strength cigars in there, but they're not necessarily relevant to the various levels that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay.
That could have been a cool thing to do, right? With, say, full bodied, stronger
Start
cigars,
off with mild and work your way up.
Yeah, that would be quite a cool sort of avenue to take.
I will ask Fowler if and Romy if that is the case, but I'm not aware it is.
No, that's okay.
Enough. So where does this rank in between them? Do you know the Fellowcraft?
No,
okay.
I don't. I don't. I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle when no one's sort of involved in it. It's quite a difficult one to try and understand, as you say, because there's so many secrets behind it. But
I want to join now and find out. It's a long process, no doubt. So do you want to? Sorry,
I was going to say we'll go on to
of
the
course,
Cavalier. So the cigar that I'm sampling, and obviously the second cigar that you guys will have had in your subscription box, is the Cavalier Viso Jalapa Torpedo. This one is a Nicaraguan Puro.
Yep.
All Jalapan tobacco. I was going to say this is only my second introduction to Cavalier. Yep. I was saying off camera I had the Black Label Robusto a couple of months ago, and that really blew me away. Really, really enjoyed it. There's a video out on that one as well. And as soon as that happened and we scheduled this podcast, I was like, I've really got to try some more of this brand. Perfect excuse to kind of sample it alongside yourself. And so far, really, really great.
Yeah.
Bold flavour profiles, a little bit of spice here and there. But
absolutely.
Very, very smooth and enjoyable so far.
I mean, Sebastian, who owns the company and blends, does some great cigars.
Yeah.
The White Series Elegante kind of build in is a more medium strength. Some of the limited editions of recent years have been fantastic. So we're very much looking forward to getting this year's iteration into the UK so people can try it.
Yeah, definitely.
And it also has the very cool gold.
I was then
gold leaf square on, which
something you don't see all that often. You don't really see any other brands doing it. I know other people kind of press different designs into their wrapper leaf a little bit here and there, but I mean, a solid gold kind of diamond, if you like, on the wrapper is just something that it stands out. It really does catch your eye. So, really, really looking forward to getting into the sort of middle part, the final third of this cigar, see where it takes me.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's a part of the cigar, a part of the leaf, so you don't have to worry about taking it off. You can just smoke through it.
I'm also enjoying Billy's kind of Cuban cut style on that.
With the angle cut.
The angle.
Yeah, see, I learned that. I took it off some. I can't remember who mentioned it to me. But I always find if you have a torpedo, I kind of like to keep the integrity of the point. So if I hold it up like this, it kind of looks like you've still got that point.
Oh, no. I think it's a really good solution to a torpedo-style cigar because you actually open it up a decent amount. You run less of a risk of unraveling.
Yeah.
It's kudos.
It's something I kind of stand by now.
I'm with it. It's the only type of cigar I will do.
Yeah, same.
That
and like sort of figurado, double anything with a taper. I kind of think if you chuck it on, it means you can't ever come underneath it. You know, you're keeping the integrity of the shape of the cigar, and it's just something I kind of picked up. But cool, not everybody notices that. I kind of try at events and stuff. We had one the other day, and as I say, the guy that came, he was sat down. He was like, he looked at the second cigar of the night, and he was like, "Well, how do I cut this?" And so every time I get asked that question, I always say the same thing. I do this just
Yeah.
because it opens it up. If you're trying to pull it through a tiny aperture at the
Yeah.
top,
Yeah.
you're like, it's like sucking for a straw,
Yeah.
right? It's quite difficult. So
Yeah, you don't get as much of the flow of smoke and
Exactly.
maybe not even as much flavour, but yeah.
good eye. Good
yes,
eye.
absolutely.
Have you ever done a V-cut on a torpedo?
I have once or twice. I did it in the Dominican.
I've tried and failed miserably because I just kind of completely butchered the end because there's not enough to cut into. In my opinion, I mean, one of the great things about cigars is it's subjective.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, one man's meat, so to speak, and the way you cut it, smoke it, what you prefer.
Exactly.
But I quite like the odd V-cut on a regular, but on a torpedo, I was all over the place, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I say I've only done it once or twice. I like to use the Calibri V-cut just because it's so deep. So when I went across the top of it, it kind of cut out just enough to then open it up enough kind of thing. But yeah, since learning about this kind of technique, I've stood by it. It's never served me anything other than good. So, but yeah.
Well, you got me onto it as well. So
Yeah,
I do that
100%.
now as well. And I always recommend it to people at events and whatnot as well. So it's just fantastic.
I'm with you both there.
It's weird what you pick up and learn over the years, right?
Absolutely.
V-cuts are weird, aren't they? I feel like most V-cuts are really small.
Quite shallow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of the Zycar ones are fairly deep. There's a Paleo, which is also fairly deep at the more value end of the cutters.
Yeah.
But yes, some you almost have to have a second go. But yeah,
I think with that, as you said previously, it's all preference and what you prefer. It's kind of like trial and error, right? If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, then try something else and
absolutely
something that will come along. But
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we can go into a little bit more about Alan and sort of your journey. I think you were going to bring it up earlier, and then we got onto some other things. So I'll hand it back to you.
No worries. So I think it would be great for people to know who you are and what you do, who you work for. So if you could give us a little introduction to yourself.
Okay. So I work for Brightleaf Distribution. I've been in the cigar industry now for what will be approaching just over 18 years. Started off at Henry Winterman's, which became STG. I've also worked for Davidoff as well. And I just love it. It's an industry like no other. Where there is a camaraderie there. It's not a huge industry, but it's quite big, and yet it feels more like family. So I love it.
Yeah.
Also love the products.
Yeah.
Kind of helps.
I just say it's an absolute bonus when you can sit and just talk about cigars and things.
And I'd always loved cigars. Always been interested, and I'd been mainly in the drinks industry beforehand. So there is a certain amount of, parallel types, certainly in spirits and so on. And an opportunity came up. I thought, well, yeah, great. Love cigars. I was going to work with an old boss who we got on very well with, who'd been in the drinks industry, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've been here ever since. Brightleaf, we import and distribute cigars, New World cigars, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Dominican. Most of ours are Dominican made. And we also do a lot of accessories. So we do Zycar and Paleo, Vector. We have a lot of other smaller products. We do a lot of cases from people like Jamar or Zubota Pearl. Big range, covers all the bases. I mean, pretty much everything that you could want to smoke or accessorize with cigars, we do.
Full package, really, yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a nod as well to Zycar, because I know we mentioned earlier a little bit about cutters and stuff, but Zycar makes some of the best cutters. I mean, the blades just never seem to...
Yeah.
Like, they never seem to get blunt. You can use the same one over and over.
It's a big range, but I think most people who've been into cigars for even just a year or so will recognise things like the XI1 and XI2. You know, it's that...
Yeah.
Definitely
the shape of it, the look of it. Everybody knows that product. And as you say, it's kind of a fail-safe.
Yeah.
They're pretty much bulletproof.
Yeah.
And always give a good cut.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a XI2 at home, and that's one that's like, it's just your trusty. And
Is that the Camacho one?
I believe so, yeah. The one
great.
that we got through the training and stuff. But yeah, Zycar made, obviously, and as I say, I've been using that for the last 3 years, and it's still as good as new.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got one that I had way before I joined Brightleaf, and it's a little bit scraped because I'm frankly clumsy, but still going strong. Still going strong.
Yeah, it's as I say, a testament to the production of that.
Absolutely.
I've not looked too much into sort of paleo and things like that, but from what I hear on the market and things like that, it's another one that's kind of...
I mean, it's at a lower price point.
Yeah.
You know, everything from the Vesuvius retails at about £10. Some really good cutters, 2-finger style closing cutters rather than the Zycar ones. But really good product made by Zycar. So it's the same people, but just at a lower price point. So good entry level, solid, long lasting.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that you had the opportunity to get into the cigar industry, but you enjoyed cigars previously beforehand.
There it goes. Honestly, I'm going to have to hoover up after myself.
Our ashtray is empty.
Yeah.
His carpet was white before we all started.
I'm so sorry, gents.
That's absolutely fine. As I say, 9 times out of 10, that's me dropping ash all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed cigars for a long time, and shamelessly, I had my first cigar, which was liberated from my dad's collection when I was too young. It didn't go particularly well because I thought it was going to be like a cigarette, which made me slightly ill. But I was still quite fascinated by the whole thing, and then it was kind of went to uni. We would have nights out and dinners with sports clubs, and often the cigars would come out, and kind of kept going. Not necessarily in a serious way. I wasn't what you would call a collector or an aficionado. I just enjoyed the process, the product, and arguably as important, that kind of sense of, I mentioned it before, camaraderie, where, you know, you sit down, even with a group of strangers having a cigar, and you're kind of not strangers while you're going through that process. And I kind of loved that feel. So when the chance to go into the industry came, I thought, yeah.
How did that sort of come around? Because I mean, obviously it's like hand in hand. If you're someone that loves the industry before you even get involved in it, I mean, how did the opportunity? Okay.
Luck, really. I'd worked at a drinks company with the guy who offered me a job in cigars. That company ceased to be, so we were both looking. I had my own drinks company for a short while. And he offered me a job, and it seemed the sensible thing to do, and that's been it. I've just enjoyed it.
Never look back,
and back in those days, I was doing more of the machine mades. We still did handmade, so I was still involved in it, but it was more dealing with multiple grocers and so on. I was head of sales and then head of marketing, but it was always the handmades and the events and so on. That's the thing that attracts you, or attracted me to the industry, and is what's kept me in for quite a long time now.
So you've been in and around it for a fair long time. Did you say it was 18 years?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a long way to go until we match it, but as I say, it's an industry that kind of ever evolves, ever learning. There's nothing, there's never a dull day. I know we say it'll probably sound like a broken record to the guys listening, but it's one of them things that you come into work each day and there's something new to learn about. There's definitely there's a new brand or there's a new line coming out that you know, the blends are ever changing. The innovation is there all the time. People are always driving the industry forward and creating these new things. And it's just something that, as I say, attracts you.
It gets its claws into you.
Yeah, as soon as you're in.
It's something that it kind of ends up being in your blood. I really believe that. And as I was mentioning to you off camera, you know, the industry is very close.
Yeah.
People help each other out genuinely, not because they have to, but because they want to help out. And it's not many places like that.
No.
I've never experienced it before.
I was going to say, because if you look at like the big companies across any sort of other industry, it's always like they're butting heads, everyone's against each other. You know, I mean, the easiest one to think about is when you look at supermarkets and you've got Aldi and you've got Tesco and you've got M&S and they're always coming at each
other.
They make
brutal.
adverts shading each other.
Absolutely
it's
brutal.
Always great fun to watch. And like all their admins and stuff is really funny to read through, but it's the polar opposite in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, we compete. You know,
of course,
different retailers compete with different retailers, the suppliers do, but it is done with a kind of sense of fairness and almost cooperation. You know, it's a challenging industry. So if we don't all pull together and work things out ourselves, no one's going to do it for us.
No, of course.
Exactly. Especially that links into the Use Your Voice campaign, which we'll touch on a little bit later, but it all kind of interlinks. And that's why we need to come together, really need to come together.
Yeah.
But as you said, you've been in the industry for 18 years. I'm sure that you've experienced a lot throughout those years, but are there any key sort of lessons that you've learned throughout that time that you could share with us?
Yes, there are. One I've just covered, which is about the friendliness of the industry, and that's actually very important for us to move forward and improve our businesses and our offerings to consumers. I think another one, and I don't want to get back to legislation too much, but it is that you can always find a way to get around certain issues. You know, we do sit in one of the most legislated industries on earth.
Unfortunately.
And it is particularly so in the UK, but we work around it. And the other one is that the industry's it's changed a lot. You know, back 18 years ago, certainly once there was the 2007 ban in smoking in public places, so, you know, your restaurants and the hospitality all went, the industry took a big hit. And back then, if you went to a cigar event, it was mainly people getting on in years.
Right.
You know, I've just turned 60, so I would be one of those guys now. But the industry was, the consumers were getting ever older.
Yeah.
And now we sit here and people like yourselves, we've got a lot of younger adult consumers, mid-20s onwards, who've come to love cigars. You know, there's so many more brands on the market now, and it's evolved, in a good way.
I think sort of the new world side of things has definitely expanded. It's
100%.
blown up.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can reflect kind of on a negative period of time for pretty much the entire world of COVID, you know.
Yeah.
But that kind of happened, and I think that spurred that sort of move forward in terms of the demographic dropping down, and you know,
you're spot on, because it was a catalyst like I don't think any of us saw coming. No. You know, we sat at home thinking, well, am I going to get furloughed because what we're going to do? Yeah. And it was the opposite. Yeah. You know, I had friends in hospitality. I felt guilty about talking about cigars because it was booming. People are stuck at home looking for things to do. And all around the world, it wasn't just the UK, it was everywhere. Cigars seemed to be one of those things that people looked at.
Yeah.
And often people wanting to try new things. So the number of Vitolas that were on the UK market then, I don't know for sure, I'm saying there's probably 40 or 50% more now, just in that 5-year period. You know, if you go onto the C.Gars website and click cigars, the number of brands, just brands, not vitolas within the brands, is enormous.
It's phenomenal.
And if I had a time machine and went back and did that pre-COVID, it was still a hefty list. But I guarantee there were a lot of brands that weren't there. A lot. So,
definitely.
that was just an astonishing thing to see. And I love now I always love going to events, don't get me wrong. But I do love going to events now where I'm like the older statesman.
Right.
But it's people who've come into cigars in the last few years because it's new blood.
Yeah,
and actually, I'll often do events where there's people who know more about it than me because it's become such a passion. And the ability and the availability of social media, podcasts like Sip and Smoke, to be able to go and learn is immense. And that's a big change.
Yeah, it's an incredible step forward. And as you mentioned, it seems like the marketing side of it, or the social media side of it has absolutely boomed as well, hasn't it? So it's definitely a step forward. And hopefully, I would say, we reflect on it and think it's probably one of the worst periods for us to have ever lived through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it brought this industry from one level to the next, right?
Yeah.
So you take the positives with the negatives, as they say. But as I say, I cannot see it ever slowing down, really. Unfortunately, the UK government try and change that. There's a few laws and legislations that they're trying to pass through that, obviously, as Lewis mentioned, that we'll talk about. But hopefully, it's another one that we can kind of get around or move forward or find that route through that. But.
Well, shall we talk about it now? I think
it seems like
it's quite
an organic
important
place to have a look at. That's for sure.
A very important topic, I think, and we need your help, you guys who are watching and listening, because there's a Usual Voice campaign which is calling for cigar lovers to push back against the strict tobacco regulations. How do you see these regulations affecting businesses like Brightleaf or C.Gars?
Well, I mean, obviously with the generational smoking ban, which is what we're essentially talking about, we'll add a year onto the minimum smoking age every year from 2027. And initially, I guess that's not going to make a huge difference. However, obviously in the long term, it removes choice from adults. It's one of those that I don't know how it's going to be implemented, how people can, in 10 years, you're going to have to ask anybody who looks under about 35 for ID. And I'm not sure that's a good thing, but it is the removal of choice from consenting adults in what is ultimately, although it's grown, a relatively small part of tobacco. And it's one that the retailers and online sellers regulate themselves very well. They don't sell to underage people. It's not even a product that people are trying to purchase. 95% of handmade cigar smokers are over the age of 25, and about 75% are over 35. So although that age has come down over the years, it's not really a problem for underage smoking. So it feels like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, to be honest. Yeah,
it's also one of them things. It's like, as you say, it takes away the choice of people that are of age to make their choice. They understand the risks. They understand the issues that it could potentially bring. But I think with that, people are kind of amalgamating cigar smoking with cigarette smoking, and the government are looking at all of it being the exact same thing. And as we know, cigar smoking is way more than that. It's more of a relaxed thing. It's more about the experience. You're not taking it into your lungs. You're not doing this. It's all about flavour and trying to understand where the processes happen. It's a very different situation to just going outside for a 30-second, quick smoke, and then you're running back in. I don't know many people that kind of get addicted to cigars in terms of a nicotine front. People like the taste and they love the experience and they like the social aspect of it.
And I, when we talk about the benefits of cigar smoking, it's a relaxing thing to do.
Of course.
I always say it's a meditation.
Well, I have a little built corner at the end of my garden, and when I go and just sit on my own with either a book or my headphones, that is exactly what it is. Honestly, Lewis, I'm almost meditating. I'm at my calmest and most, chilled in those moments. It's lovely. And it would be terrible for people not to be able to experience that if they should choose. We're not forcing anybody to do this.
Exactly. And I think, as you say, it's the meditation thing. I think a lot of people that enjoy cigars look at it in that same light. I mean, me and Lewis have spoke about it on the podcast in various videos before, and it's like, you have like a rough day, or you have this, something's happened, and you think, I just need 45 minutes, hour and a half to myself where I can just clear my head. And that's exactly what these products bring.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I say, we've mentioned it numerous times before.
Yeah.
But
It's either a meditation type thing or it's social.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be sat in front of a computer screen all day talking to nobody, but then go out to a cigar lounge or a place and all of a sudden you're having a chat with people.
With that, you go to a lounge, it's people from all walks of life. And
absolutely.
there's no judgment, there's no nothing.
Absolutely.
You go in and somebody could be sat there smoking £150 cigar. The person next to them could be spending £20 on their cigar. Yeah. But there's never any judgment in that. There's no sort of hierarchy or anything like that. It's like, okay, we're here, we've got the same common passion. Let's talk as humans.
I always give the example stating exactly that about the puffin rooms in Liverpool. So when I was at Davidoff, we did the first ever event there. And over the years, I've been going back quite a few times, not as much as I would like because it's gorgeous.
Lovely, yeah.
But there used to be two regulars there. One, I'm sure he won't mind me saying if he sees this, hopefully not, called Adam. And he's always beautifully suited and booted. And he's a local lad from Toxteth.
Okay.
But he always makes the effort and dresses up. One of his best friends is the son of the Lord. Now, I would have never known that because he's just a regular guy.
Yeah.
And they have become best friends. And
through
C.Gars, the enjoyment of not just the cigars, but the whole ceremony and the enjoyment together of them. And it's just fantastic. And as you say, you could be sat next to a lorry driver or a wealthy banker, and it usually doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's in them moments, it's about sharing that passion, sharing that common ground, and finding that. And as you say, you end up creating and making new friends all the time. And I know, obviously, for yourself, traveling around and doing all the events, you've probably made some real good relationships.
I genuinely have, I genuinely have, and it's a joy.
It's a very special thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the thing is, this isn't going to just affect Brightly for C.Gars or other retailers in the UK. This is going to affect distributors and brands like Hiram Solomon, like everyone across the world. This is going to affect not just the UK.
It is. I mean, that again is part of the problem. Obviously, New Zealand were going to bring it in and decided not to. But it's a bit like, 10-pin bowling. Once you knock the right one down, things tend to follow. Yeah. And unfortunately, if it's done in the UK, there will be governments around the world going, oh, well, maybe we should do that. So it does have a knock-on effect.
Well, didn't they in New Zealand figure that it didn't work out, that it wouldn't have worked?
I'm pretty sure that's why they stopped doing it. And that, and also the complexity of implementing it. And how do you do that in the long term?
Yeah.
And we're in the main, certainly in the UK, talking about not huge businesses. Brightleaf, there's kind of 4 of us directly employed, and we get help from others. So we're not a huge business, but obviously in the long term, volumes of cigars being bought would be affected, which will mean that some of the smaller and frankly great brands of cigars won't be able to stay in the market because the volume just won't be there. We're having to ship these products several thousand miles, and at some point there is a cutoff where it's worth it. And
Exactly.
so therefore we'll not only lose our choice, the younger consumers will lose the choice to try at all, but we as people who are of the age we still can will start to lose choice a lot.
Yes.
I've no idea how quickly it would have an effect, but we'll lose brands, we'll lose choice, even within the cigars we have.
You say, because it kind of sorry, I just absolutely cleared my head then. Sorry, I don't know what's happened there. This happens to me on a regular basis. But yeah, you say about the choice and stuff, the knock on. I mean, you've got cigar brands that only make cigars for certain markets around the world, as it is how it is now. I mean, in terms of, obviously I'm not most clued up on the side, but in terms of imports and taxes and stuff, it doesn't necessarily always make sense for a Vitola to come over to the UK or a blend or this, because it won't do so well.
Yeah.
As you say, if you start losing the choice, that then limits even further how much we're going to get into the UK and how much, as I say, we're going to be able to do it. And it goes back to, it's an adult making the choice to enjoy something they enjoy, and ultimately
and we do need to join together, whether that's distributors, retailers, consumers. So most, as far as I'm aware, certainly all the retailers I've been around will have the details of how you can go online, enter that campaign and use your voice. But obviously we'd like everybody in the industry, whether it's individuals, companies, retailers, consumers, to contact their MPs about it, talk, get that out, because, fundamentally it is an attack on adult choice.
Freedom of choice,
and it's an important battle.
I think, as you mentioned, it's massive for everyone to get involved, and that's kind of why retailers and distributors and things like that are reaching out to you guys at home to contact your MPs and let them know that you're opposing this legislation that potentially will come to fruition. But it's definitely an important thing to touch on. It's definitely an important thing. If it's going to affect you at home, as if you're watching this podcast, it definitely will. You enjoy cigars. It's definitely something that you guys need to address. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I'll put a link on the screen as well for you guys, so you can use that link.
Perfect.
To me, it also just doesn't make sense, because the government are already taxing so heavily on it. If this legislation comes into hand, then they're not going to receive that tax money.
No,
they're going to lose money. So it doesn't make sense.
I mean, who knows the thought processes behind it? I guess it's, the long-term aim was for a smoke-free Britain, but as Billy mentioned, there are differences between cigarettes and cigars and pipe tobacco.
Definitely.
That we find obvious. Maybe other people don't. But honestly, use your voice or lose your choice. Follow the link. Please help, I guess is the message.
Cool.
But I guess we've touched on the negatives and the legislation that could
Let's move on to the nice bits.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose we can still look at sort of the future of the industry and how it's going to move forward. But we are always, as retailers, as distributors, we look at trends and how things are progressing, and what is being enjoyed by the consumer in terms of size of Vitola and things like that. But have you noticed anything sort of in the last couple of years to few years, or even over a long period of time, the change in what people are preferring nowadays in terms of bigger Vitolas, smaller, different shape?
So I'll maybe go back a few years before the few years you're talking about.
Okay.
We were definitely going through a bigger is better kind of period, particularly on ring gauge. Short, big ring gauges were becoming stylish. Big 6x60s were coming more into the market, something that wasn't really historically here in the first place.
Yeah.
And they were becoming very popular. And a few things had, not necessarily then, but over the period of time, almost disappeared. Lonsdale's Lanceros, narrower ring gauges, even some Coronas maybe outside the Cuban Vitolas were slowly just dropping. and dropping, and possibly even Connecticut wrappers.
Right.
The darker wrappers were getting more popular and so on, and now those have started to come back a bit. So you do see a lot of the New World manufacturers and suppliers making like Lonsdales and Lanceros, Coronas or half Coronas. And those have made a real comeback. They're not selling anywhere near the Robusto, which is still the king of the the sizes, but they made a real comeback. Some of those in tins, you know, the little half Corona tins, that have really become more popular. And then in the last year or so, I think Connecticut's have really made a bit of a comeback.
Yes, yeah.
And I think they're different than maybe what I used to perceive of as a Connecticut, which was a very grassy, kind of almost vegetal taste. They tend to be, for me anyway, to have more flavour than they used to. But so, yeah, there's been changes. Where we'll go next? Well, if I knew that,
you'd be ahead of the game.
It would definitely help. But and then, of course, we have issues in the UK with, well, where do you go to smoke? There are lounges out there, but unfortunately, once you get outside London, there's not many. We don't have the nicest weather.
Certainly not.
I think that's the master of understatement. We definitely don't have the nicest weather, and people are looking for a narrower ring gauge and maybe a shorter smoke. Certainly during the winter, we see a big uplift in smaller cigars.
I was going to say, because especially in the UK, our seasons, they're a bit skewed at this point, right? It seems like winter's 3/4 of the year.
They're just so confused with me. It starts off and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be really warm next week, and then it's just snowing.
It's
so confusing.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the bigger ring gauges and your Toros and 6x60s, or, you know, even bigger cigars, because the duty is on weight, they're expensive.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, even within a brand, the jump from one size of cigar to the next one up can be massive.
That's another thing that I think that consumers seem to kind of miss, and they think, okay, well, I can get this an inch shorter, and it's say £5-6 cheaper. But unfortunately for the UK, everything's done on weight of tobacco, so the extra weight in that Toro or 6x60 is massive, so it does push the price quite dramatically. I was going to say we had a guy come in for another event, and he came over and he said about the H. Chapman half Coronas, and he said, I bought these abroad and they were so and so. Was that because they were fake? And I was like, and I basically took him through. It's like, no, unfortunately for the UK, we're taxed very different to say Europe, Spain, America, places like that. Unfortunately, we get the brunt of it, and our prices are way higher. But again, it's another thing the government introduced, and they tax it very differently. But again, it comes back down to an education side of it, especially with the Use Your Voice campaign and how the pricing increases and stuff like that. It's kind of our job as distributors, retailers, to get that educational side of it over to the consumer.
It's not our choice to raise the prices.
No, exactly.
There's nothing we can do about it. We have to abide by these laws.
Unfortunately not. But I think we'll still see a little move again on narrower ring gauges, slightly smaller cigars. Certainly for a year or so.
The bigger ring gauges, did this stem from a different market then? Because I know in America they feel like the bigger the better.
I think a lot of it, if I'm honest. I think a lot of the bigger ring gauges, and certainly the very big cigars, is very much driven by the American market. And, a Robusto is our most popular size for both Brightleaf, the market as a whole, and I'm pretty sure C.Gars. Whereas in America, it's probably a 6x60, or a Toro is their preferred. But then obviously we've got 7x70, 8x80, and those are big cigars. And, when you weigh them and then you work out. So there are some on the market, and there's some good ones of those, but very much American-led. And of course, there's obviously a lot of the states have good weather for a lot of the year, so it's easier to smoke outdoors. They also have a lot of cigar lounges all over. So that bigger ring gauge, they have the time.
I was going to say, it seems like a choice. Like it comes down to sort of choice. They're sport for choice over there, kind of. Weather 9 times out of 10 is 20 degrees hotter than here. We don't necessarily get that, so you can see kind of.
I mean, it's a huge market. I think last year they imported 470 million handmade cigars into the US.
Yeah, that's insane.
So it's not always easy to get the figures for Cuban production, but if you factor in an average for them, they're kind of smoking over 60% of the world's handmade cigars. So that is obviously, if they want big cigars, they're going to get big cigars because it's everyone's almost biggest market.
Do you think?
But a lot of the suppliers though realise they can make some fantastic cigars with the narrower ones, and I'm not sure it's been market led. I think it's been manufacturer led.
Okay.
They put them on the American market. These products they have sold. They realise they sell well in Europe and other markets. I don't think we've certainly not gone back and said, "Can you make a Lancero for us?" They've offered it.
Yeah. Which is also a good thing because, as I say, it doesn't create any sort of rift between sort of supplier and brand because they're creating what they want to create.
Yeah.
And obviously from them, it's selling well.
Yeah.
They're going to enjoy it more. The relationship between supplier and brand is always going to be a good level.
Yes.
Because obviously if you're going back saying, okay, well, we want this in this, and they're like, well, it doesn't necessarily work. And you're like, well, we need a blah, blah, blah. And you start getting pushy. It can kind of break it a little bit.
We'll always have those sort of conversations.
Yeah, of course.
But, ultimately they'll tell you if it can work or not. But yeah.
And with the blends, you said that the Connecticut is coming back a lot. I don't know if you noticed the same or yourself, Billy, but I've seen that a lot of Indian tobacco is being used now, and that's making a bit of a move within the market. I can't think of any names on top of my head, but someone recently showed me that there were a few different brands with a lot of Indian tobacco within it.
We don't have any that I'm aware of. No, most of our brands you will get a breakdown of what's in it. Some won't. Some will, even within their range. Some they'll give you the full. This is a Jalapa. This is Condega. This is whatever, and then some it'll just say pura Nicaraguan.
Yeah.
So we don't always know, but I don't know of any of ours who are using Indian. Indian tobacco is used in a lot of pipe tobacco. I'll have to check that out, actually.
It's an interesting one.
I was going to say, I remember you mentioned it to me about the Indian tobacco, and I was like, I've never really seen it too much used in, say, cigar production. So it'd be an intriguing one if more brands and more blends are starting to kind of incorporate it in. Because as you say...
I mean, they grow a lot of tobacco. They certainly do.
I
shall investigate.
I've seen Costa Rica as well have been moving more into it as well.
Yes, they have.
There's a few brands out there.
So yeah, we've got a brand El Septimo which is made in Costa Rica. Got some good manufacturer, relatively small scale when you compare it to their northern counterparts in Nicaragua or Honduras, but it is growing. There's some interesting. I mean, the beauty about cigars and New World cigars is the ability to use tobacco from anywhere. If you got good Indian tobacco or Indonesian or Brazilian or the blenders, they're the rock stars. The ability to be able to go, I'll get some Mexican San Andres, and then I'll have some, Hermastran from. It boggles my mind.
Yeah,
and I did a Zoom event once where we were allowed to choose a blend, and we were even given guidance, and they made the cigars and they sent them to us, and I thought, I've nailed it. I'm going to have nailed this. I kind of know my stuff.
Right.
And they'd said, no, right, we won't make this great just because, we will do exactly what you tell us.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
No.
It wasn't good. I'm not going to say who or where.
Yeah.
And I smoked the first one with a friend, and he was far too polite to say so.
Right.
We got like halfway through, and I'm like, it's not very good, is it? And my admiration for these guys who can look at a leaf, smell it, and think, yeah, that's going to work here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the
isn't it?
ability to blend it from so many different countries is for me, I still struggle to get my head around
isn't it?
Still struggle to get my head around
This is part of the reason why I kind of advocate for the high prices, because there's so much that goes into it. I mean, there's one thing telling someone what goes into it, but you'll know as you went as well. So I recently went to the Dominican Republic with Davidoff,
and
just seeing everything that goes into it, the amount of
crazy,
people, and you
crazy.
think, and people are moaning about spending £30 on a cigar.
Well,
you'll go out for a meal and spend 40, £50.
Up to 300 people involved in getting you
one cigar.
This cigar.
Yeah.
You know, from the field to labelling, boxing, it's incredible. And I went to the Dominican Republic last year, my first trip to a cigar factory after all these years, unbelievably. But I was kind of walking around with my jaw down here thinking, well, I knew this, but when you see it, as you say, you know, you go out for a pint, have 2-3 pints, you're setting you back. Certainly in London,
I was going to say
you can get a decent cigar, and I think there is a value to it, even though we've got the high taxes. That, you know, you get an hour plus out of a good cigar, and it is. And I wish more people could go and see the work and the expertise and the, you know, the time they have to sit on the tobacco, fermenting, curing, fermenting, aging, rolling. It's just crazy.
I was going to say, like, the time frame. I think people seem to forget how long it takes just to create this.
They think it's just plucked from the ground, rolled into a cigar, put in a box. But
the process could have started 10 years ago.
I mean, this Rocky Patel Orchard Selection there's nothing in there below about four and a bit years old. You know, that's crazy to me.
And people will go out and pay £50 for a steak.
Yeah.
And they'll eat that and go, that was amazing. But it takes 10 minutes for them to eat it. And you're here for an hour plus with a cigar, enjoying it, and they're saying, God, I spent £25 on this. This is bonkers.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I wish they were cheaper.
Of course.
But you're absolutely right, Lewis. You're absolutely right. And, I mean, the craftsmanship, everything is insane to me. I know the industry, but I still am in absolute wonder. And the differences between these 3 cigars, using dried leaves, but somebody has the ability to blend that
and change it completely.
And it's like, so if I had a hat, I'd tip it to those
really
men and women who bring us these fantastic products.
I was going to say, just going back to sort of trends and things, do you think the younger generation kind of getting into it, I say younger, I mean, obviously of age, getting into it, do you feel like brands are kind of trying to acclimatise to that and trying to change their blends a little bit to try and attract more?
That's a good question. I'm not necessarily sure on blends. Certainly on branding. You know, whether it's boxes or bands or names, definitely, without a doubt. And again, I think that's been led from the States, where there's everything from the classic style bands and vitolas to, well, as I said, you know, 9x90s and outlandish names and so on. But there's definitely been a modernisation of branding and so on. Yeah, I guess for a while, some of the blending might, particularly in the States, have been aimed at younger smokers with some of the infused style. Although then, to be fair, they've had a long history of flavoured machine-made cigars. But definitely on the branding. I think with some of the more modern brands, if you actually talk to the people making them, so we just started doing warped cigars. Kyle Gellis, who does the blending and so on, he's been doing it almost since he was like 18, 19. His branding, a lot of it is much more modern. But when you look at, he was actually one of the first, if you like, smaller independent. He's quite big now. Was very much looking at classic vitola sizes based on old Cuban, narrow ring gauge, slightly shorter and so on. So he's maybe targeted on branding, but in terms of the blend and the style, it's actually quite old school.
Okay.
And I think there's a few examples like that.
Yeah, I feel like, as you say, it's kind of etching back in history and kind of sticking to tradition, right? And obviously Cuba are one to do that. They stick to the tradition. They kind of pump out what they've been pumping out over decades, you know. Yeah. And to see New World brands kind of doing that same sort of thing and taking it back to the
I think you're right. Inspired by history, but done in a modern way.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. That's very special to remember where it all stemmed from. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in some industries, things can evolve so much that you kind of forget where it came from.
Yeah.
And it loses that special touch. And so I think with the cigar industry, it very much keeps that special touch because it is all about the history and where, who originally grew tobacco and where it all stemmed from. I think it's really important to highlight that.
It is. It is. It is a special part of the industry. We should never try or attempt to move away from.
No. But how do you see the industry evolving within the next 5 years then?
Another good question.
I know that we've seen a lot more QR codes now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll continue to see more involvement of social media. Mm-hmm. You know, Instagram's become quite big for the cigar industry. I'd love the QR codes in some of the manufacturers' boxes where you can, click on it and one or two of them it'll even tell you who's rolled it.
That's amazing.
Which is, and I love you were talking about that human touch about what it is to make a cigar. That's great. I love that. So I think we'll definitely see more use of technology and getting the message over.
I think, as you mentioned, it takes you back to who rolled the cigar. I think that's also a way that the brand can show appreciation to their workforce, right? Yeah. These guys, without them, the cigars necessarily wouldn't exist. Yeah. If they don't have the people there rolling them on the rolling floors each day, they wouldn't exist. So I think that's a good way to give back and keep employees and things like that on board and feel like they're appreciated by the brand as a whole and they're not just this, a number, as we all kind of say.
Yeah.
I think you kind of notice that when you go to the factories as well. When you go and you see and you look across the rolling floor and it's like everyone sat there with a smile on their face. It's really. I think
that was actually one of the things that struck me the most. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of the factories for our suppliers, a couple of not hours, and it was people were happy in their work.
Yeah,
and we must say that in most of the cigar manufacturing countries, they are very good places to work. The manufacturers look after their people. Yeah. They make sure they've got healthcare. They help with education for their kids. They tend to be paid better than if they were doing a job somewhere else. So, and then the atmosphere in everyone have been, and it's not been fake.
No.
It really hasn't been. Has been kind of heartwarming.
Yeah.
If I'm honest. It's nice to be in an industry you like and you can see other people enjoy being in.
Definitely. I think that's also another thing that consumers don't necessarily get to see. It's another way to appreciate the brand a little bit more for me. And as you said, it kind of you hold that and you think, okay, well, it's not just churn it out. Yeah. We're just going to do this. It's like, okay, well, each and every single person that we employ is appreciated. You're part of the process. You're part of the journey.
Yeah.
And as I say, the appreciation there just skyrockets for me.
Yeah, 100%.
Go on, would you like to say something?
I was going to mention, because obviously we're talking about the evolution, and cigar accessories are a big thing within the Brightleaf portfolio. Are there any sort of new innovations that we're seeing with accessories? I know that there are a lot of electronic devices now that are being used, so buttonless accessories and whatnot, lighters and whatnot, but are there any other unique innovations that we can see?
I think we've seen some innovation in the last few years. You mentioned, the electric USB charge lighters, and we do a couple of those ourselves with Vector. But I've not seen anything truly innovative just yet. But then we're kind of coming up into trade show season, particularly in the States where the TPE's just happened. PCA's happening in April in New Orleans, and that will tend to be where we will see what's come out. Last year, there were new products. I wouldn't necessarily say anything was, oh, wow, never seen anything like that before.
I think it's quite a difficult one because, you know, the cutter, you've got a few different options. You know, you've got V-cut, straight cut, punch cut. How do you sort of change that in design to be completely new? You know, I mean, the people at the top of the brands that kind of keep coming up with these ideas, testament to them again. You know, it's quite a difficult thing because, you know, a guillotine cutter, you think, okay, well, that's literally all you kind of need.
Yeah.
But then they'll create that in a complete different variation that will do the same thing.
Yeah.
But it looks completely different.
I suppose if it works, then don't change it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, V-cut, there were cross cuts for a while.
Yeah.
Seem to have fizzled out a little bit. Were innovations at some point. Obviously, lighters went through they all used to be single flame.
No, you see that triple flame.
Way back in the day when I was a lad, they were all soft flame or matches. You've got, then it went to double, then triple, then quadruple. And actually, I think it's almost slightly moving back when people realise that actually a good single flame or dual flame probably does the job. There are some of the quad flames that kind of go in a little bit better, in my opinion. Things like the tactical one from C.Gars really good because it's quite targeted. Some of the massive big headed ones are like, you almost need to be careful not to completely blow up your cigar.
You have to hold the light so far away.
I agree with that. If you have like a quad flame or something like that, you know, and they're not concentrated into one point, you then end up charring the side of your cigar and things like that. And it gets quite finicky. Like, but it kind of goes back to the same thing as we mentioned earlier, back to tradition, back to the roots, and it kind of seems like a... And
I can't think of any other possible way to cut your cigar than the options we've already got. But then I'm not in product development, so probably wise.
I was going to say, I don't think I can come up with anything that's really going to take it too far for me. But it's a fun one to think about.
You compare it to 20 years ago, even the, you know, travel humidors, we've seen a lot of different styles, hard case, soft case, ones for little cases with just one or two cigars in. But I'll be interested to see what the innovation is. I'm not sure what that is going to be myself, I've got to be honest.
It's quite a difficult one to forecast, isn't it? You can't necessarily understand the brains behind some of some of these people that create things. Cause I don't know what goes on up there, but I haven't got it. But maybe, and people have dabbled with Bluetooth technology on humidors and so on. You know, whether that increases, I maybe. Because, you know, if you're remotely monitoring, I know some people still use that technology.
You just check your phone and then...
And what you can do to alter it if you're away, I don't know. But,
that's probably one that they'll probably try and figure out. Because as I say, if you look on your app and you're halfway across the world and you think, okay, humidity is quite high. Without physically being there, how do you remove some of that? Brighter
minds than me will try and figure that one out.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it up to the...
I'll smoke the cigars if they can do the innovation.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I'll stick to my lane too. I suppose, quickly going on from that, I suppose we could touch on a little bit of advice. As I say, we've got a little bit of... You've got options, punch cut, soft flame, you know, loads of different things. Advice for new starters, new cigar enjoyers, you know, what would you say would you say kind of go to the basics, you know, single flame, straight cut, things like that?
I've got to be honest, yes. I probably would. You know, it's an expensive hobby. So, but cutter in particular is one not necessarily to try and save too much money on, because we were talking about XI1s and XI2s. Sometimes getting a very good cutter that will last you forever is a good investment.
100%.
But personally, I would probably start with the basics. Single, I like a jet flame.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest.
Yeah,
I find it
agree.
easier.
Yeah.
I have noticed a bit of a trend for more people using matches when I go to events.
Yeah.
Almost going back. But for me, if I was starting out now, I'd get myself a relatively inexpensive but biggish tanked single jet, a straight cutter, and I'd probably get myself some sort of semi-hard either leather case or a harder body case to carry around a couple of cigars.
Yeah, 100%. I think I definitely agree with that. There's another guy, obviously Anthony, who mentions all the time, and he says finding a lighter when you're out and about.
Yeah.
Fairly simple. You could probably ask 90% of a pub or a bar or anything, and you'll get a lighter. If you haven't got a cutter, trying to find one.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, we probably all used thumbnails and so on, and it's not good.
And teeth.
Yeah,
that's not pleasant.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I lose things, I drop things, so I do tend to carry around something like that paleo because if I lose it, I'll be gutted. I've had that one for quite a while now.
Yeah.
But it's not like I've got some quite swanky lighters at home.
Yeah.
I'll take out if I know that I'm
definitely going to bring it home.
But yeah, start off with the basics.
Yeah.
One of the joys about cigars is there's then so many other options you can play around with. I haven't got it now, but I've got a key ring punch cutter.
Yeah.
You know, and actually that's quite good if you are going out or if you're travelling by plane. I mean, I've had a few cutters taken off me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I was going to do any damage with a 50 ring gauge cutter, but it's been taken off me. Whereas the punch cut, not necessarily my favourite way to cut a cigar. Yeah, but it's quite good to carry around.
I was going to say, you kind of got into punch cutting quite a lot.
I do like a punch cut, yeah.
See, I'm similar to yourself. I prefer a straight cut. But again, on my car keys, I've always got a key ring with a punch cut on there. Because as I say, if you end up misplacing or forgetting your cutter and you're heading out.
But when it's a bit like the industry, when the cigar hobby gets its claws into you, you start to look at, that's a nice humidor.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that lighter. Or that cutter's good.
Yeah.
You know, it can be a bit of a slippery slope, but it is one that is just, it's great fun.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I keep being told I need to clear the corner of the dining room where I've got a few little humidors and just all sorts.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Bit of a collection.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. I got my friend into cigars probably about a year and a half ago. He went on the next week, spent £300 on cigars. He bought a humidor. He bought, I think it was an ST DuPont lighter. Like he invested.
He didn't just dip his toe in, did he?
No.
He got them claws were deep in his
Exactly. But he works a lot in America. So he always brings back so many cigars. So, I mean, fair play. I mean, if you can do it, do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it does just bring joy.
It does,
you know, when you chat to people about it, whether it's online, at events, just out and about, it's a great... I
always find it's very, very difficult to have a not so good time when you got a cigar in your hand, you know, and that only gets amplified by the people you're sharing it with.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, events, and we're a massive advocate, and I can imagine you are too. Getting out to sampling lounges and going to these events is definitely something that I would advocate.
I think it's one of the best voices we have as an industry. Mm-hmm. Events, you know, whether it's from the retailer side to attract some regulars and new customers, to us to be able to get, you know, we can't give them away, legislation, so we can't sample them.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to visibly discount things, etc., and so on. So one of the few ways we can actually get a cigar into a consumer's hands is events.
Yeah.
And companies like C.Gars and the other people with lounges who do events outside, they're great fun, but they're also great service to the industry because people can trial things and they do it in a nice environment.
Yeah,
you know, it is a fun night out.
100%, definitely. I was going to ask you as well. I mean, a personal highlight for me when I do events and stuff. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when you see a new face that you've never seen before, and they come along. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, if you haven't seen them before, probably likelihood is they're local and they're just getting involved in the cigar industry. They're not someone that has a wealth of knowledge. They don't necessarily know the do's, don'ts, and things like that. But that for me is a personal highlight. Being able to conversate and give them a little bit of knowledge of whatever I have so that they can kind of enjoy it. They know what to look for, what they don't want to look for, and things like that. That's probably a personal highlight for me in terms of sampling events and
Giving
stuff.
the right guidance is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And that's what brings people back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not just the company, but being told, you might like this, or if you don't like this, if you cut your cigar like this, you'll experience it a little bit better. Just giving those hints and tips that really does build that rapport between you all. And
then it's fully amplified by when they come back into the store and they say, "Oh, that cigar you recommended."
It is so rewarding. There were a couple of guys at Leeds event I did last week.
Yeah.
James and Craig, I think, were come over from Bradford. First event. Before they'd left, they'd already booked the next event. It's in a few weeks' time, but they'd already booked one.
Yeah.
They were looking at when they could both get over to do them all. And it's just like great, you know.
we see that a lot.
They came out afterwards as well, and we had a little drink and another cigar, and
it's a very
just
rewarding feeling.
Yeah, really is.
good job.
Yeah, 100%.
We see that more and more. People buying tickets on the night saying, "Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I want to come to the next one. Book me in now."
Yeah,
we had the guy that came. He came a couple of months ago. It was his first ever event with us, and I sat next to him in our last event because, as I say, he finished that one. He was like, "That was really good, enjoyable evening." Blah blah blah, and he went home and he booked the next event.
Yeah.
And then he's booked another one for a couple of months' time.
Is that Soren?
Soren, yeah.
Soren, yeah.
And you sit there and you think, okay, well, that's rewarding for us because it, one, tells us that we're doing a good job, but it also means that we've created a friend there, a relationship that we can keep and move forward with. And as I say...
almost come full circle to one of the reasons why the industry's so good.
Yeah, exactly.
And you guys, in that particular instance, are helping make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I say...
Good feeling, isn't it?
Definitely, really fun.
Have you got a highlight with a cigar? What's been your most precious moment with a cigar?
God, that's got to be a broad one.
That's a long period. Flipping heck! Okay, I told you I turned 60 at Christmas. That's a long.
Okay, maybe from like the past couple of years. Is there?
Okay. Yes, there absolutely is. When I went to the Dominican Republic last year, so we went to go to Pro Cigar, but we went a bit early, and we went to see La Galera. Just saw what an amazing place it was, like the ones you guys have been to. And we met, there's a bit of a rock star roller there called Chiquito, and he makes the Chiquito Perfecto, so it's actually named after him.
Okay.
So that was great, but then having the cigar with the guys from La Galera is just... it
feels great.
We're out in beautiful weather. They're at the end of this road and they've got this beautiful painted kind of wall. Just standing around chatting. I feel like in this environment was,
them moments you can't really recreate them, can you?
I was almost thinking of emigrating then, but
it's funny. He said the same thing.
I said the same thing. I did not want to come back.
Set up a tent in the Dominican Republic for a few months, and it was that was special. I mean, I've smoked cigars at weddings and for births and so on, but that was amazing.
Yeah, it's just being around those people. It's just it's so amazing,
surreal feeling, isn't it? And it's like you kind of stand there and you're like, how have I even managed to get here?
And I think the UK's actually got a lot of consumers who've self-funded travel to go to these places. Sometimes, often Cuba, but I know quite a few people who've been to the Dominican Republic or even Nicaragua, going to events in Austria and Germany and traveling round lounges around Europe and really trying to soak up the whole vibe, I guess. But going out to those factories.
Yeah, as I say, it's surreal experience. Yeah. I couldn't wait for you to go because I went 2023, so a couple of years ago now, and I came back and I was explaining to you, I was like, it's life changing. Like
Yeah.
it's an experience that you will never
Yeah.
recreate. You'll never get that
Were
same
you
thing.
sick of listening to that for 2 years?
I was just nervous about it. I was like, oh, it's my turn now.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a daunting feeling. Like, I mean, that was my first solo trip where I knew nobody,
Yeah.
and so I drove to Heathrow Airport. I was meeting V from Davidoff, and I had no idea what he looked like, who he was, and so there were about 5 of us from the UK that met up at the airport, and we all just became such good friends. I mean, not just
Absolutely.
us UK guys.
Was that
but,
the trip just recently?
Yeah,
So you met Elsa from Havana.
Elsa, yeah, she's
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. And the people are just phenomenal. It makes the experience so much better. It's not
the environment. I mean, what's not to enjoy?
Exactly.
You've got to be a bit odd to go and not get on with everybody, because it's just, well, we could talk about this for hours,
Exactly.
but it's just such an amazing feeling. You're relaxed, you're happy.
Yeah.
The hospitality
the food
you get from these
Yeah.
the people in these environments is just,
second to none. 100%.
go out and do it, everyone, if you can.
Yeah, 100%.
Honestly.
Mhm.
Definitely. So we've talked about your most memorable cigar moment, but if you could share a cigar with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be, and why?
Very good question. I'm not going to go with the 80% people who say Winston Churchill. That's been done to death.
Yeah.
That's a very good one. And there's a couple of people alive are a bit random.
Yep.
Outside the industry, there's an actor called James Spader, who's a big cigar guy, and almost every TV show he's ever been in, he always makes sure his character smokes cigars.
Fair play.
So Boston Legal, The Blacklist, in fact, he even changed the script on The Blacklist to include the name of his favourite cigar when he was naming luxury things he couldn't do without. So he'd be quite, because I think he's quite a fun guy.
Yep.
And then somebody who is maybe no longer with us, I'd probably go for George Burns.
Okay.
You two are far too young to have any idea who he is.
I was going to say, I'm hoping you know who this person is.
So George Burns was an American comedian, little guy, so he's not taller than me, so that's a plus straight away. Little guy, glasses, very funny, was still kind of alive and working when he was 100. But he would be smoking 10 to 15 cigars a day. He basically, because of the times, was never seen when he was on stage, when he's being interviewed, when he's at cigar. Mm-hmm. And he was a big advocate for them. Okay. But he was a very, very funny guy. There's even clips of him talking about, he's being interviewed, how many cigars do you smoke? Well, not enough. So yeah, he'd be a funny one. But I do have to explain to anybody under the age of 50 who George Burns is.
Fair enough. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. Yeah, definitely.
Different names.
Yeah,
Different names,
9 times out of 10 when you ask that question, you get the usual one. You got a final one, a third person.
A third person. I've got to be honest. This one's a personal one. My dad, if he was still with us.
Yeah, fair enough.
That would be a nice one. Mm-hmm. He wasn't necessarily a big cigar smoker. He smoked. He tried pipes. He had the odd cigar.
Yeah,
but him.
Nice.
That'd be good.
That's good.
Not going to happen, unfortunately, but
Yeah, no, that's always good to come back to sort of like a close to home one.
Yeah.
I know when me and Lewis have had this conversation, I said the same about my mum's husband, Colin. He smokes cigars. Unfortunately, he doesn't smoke as like premium cigars. He works offshore, so he gets packet cigars quite a lot. So kind of sharing that experience with a real premium cigar and talking through and just putting the world to rights kind of thing.
Absolutely,
I can agree. I think that would be a tremendous sort of experience.
100%.
Yeah,
lovely.
But I guess that kind of wraps everything up. I think
wraps it up.
Everyone was going to have a much better understanding of kind of the inner workings of Brightleaf, yourself personally, what you kind of do for the industry and how everything's kind of moving forward. So just from myself and obviously Lewis, absolute pleasure to have you.
And it's been an absolute blast.
Great, I'm glad.
That's amazing.
Yeah, somebody says this is apparently work.
Yeah.
It feels like cheating slightly, you know.
Yeah.
Sit around, have a chat with you two guys and a lovely cigar. Doesn't get much better.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I guess there's one more question. You normally ask me this question, but the cigars.
Should I be worried?
No, it's just a little bit that we kind of do at the end of every episode. It's kind of, we call it for me or not for me.
Okay.
The cigars that we're enjoying today. Is it something that kind of resonates with us? Is it something that we definitely go back to? Or is it something that we've enjoyed, but it's not one that we'd necessarily reach for in the future, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does indeed.
But for me personally, obviously all cigars are different. There's a cigar out there for everyone.
Hugely.
But for me, this cigar, it kind of follows on from the Cavalier that I had a couple of months ago. Truly phenomenal, really enjoyable flavour. You know, the innovation of the gold leaf on the band, it kind of stands out. It has that extra little something, and the flavour for me was really, really enjoyable.
Good.
Bit of earthiness, slight bit of sweetness here and there, but very smooth. Nicaraguan, full-bodied.
Yeah.
Something that I really enjoy and look for in a cigar. So this cigar for me, as I say, is definitely one that I'd pick up again. What about you?
Awesome. I'll say the same thing for me. This is, from my first experience with a Hiram Solomon cigar, really, really enjoying it. Obviously, my cigar's a little bit bigger and I'm a slower smoker, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far. Super smooth, and there's a nice sweetness to it. Some slight earthiness in there as well. Yeah. And a good body and strength. And really enjoyed it with pairing as well. So if you guys,
I was going to ask this as well.
so if you guys are interested, we're sampling the Balvenie 14-year-old Caribbean cask.
Phenomenal.
Beautiful whiskey.
That really is.
Yeah, really, really good. We did it at an event recently.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what spurred me on to choose it today. But you get that bit of sweetness from the rum
There
cask.
is. It's one of those where you do actually get the sweetness from the cask through really quite strongly.
Yeah. I was going to say it kind of... Yeah, it definitely is. And it kind of cemented me. We mentioned Soren earlier at the events. He came a couple of months ago and we had another whiskey and he was like, I'm not a big whiskey drinker. Have you got a rum that we can sample? And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. So I gave it, and then obviously he came to the next one, another whiskey. We didn't do a rum that day. And I said to him, I was like, right, well, this is a whiskey, but I'm very intrigued to see what you think about it, just because it has that rum cask aging. It's going to bring a little bit more of that rum characteristic, that sweetness and things like that. And he sat there and he drank it and he said, I haven't had whiskey in so long, but that I could genuinely pick up again. Yeah. So testament to the guys at Balvenie as well. Yeah. Really, really enjoyable.
100%.
I can imagine what you're going to say, but
I love most cigars. I very rarely get one where I'm like, no, I would never try that again. It happens very rarely. But Rocky Patel, a very consistent brand. Huge differences in white label ALR, where they're really mild and creamy all the way up to and peppery and spicy. Yeah. And that one's a kind of nice, mild to medium, nice smoke, really good. So yeah, it'll always be a for me.
Fair enough. As I say, I could imagine that was going to be the answer, but as I say, we've had other guests, and it's like, and they kind of come across and they think, well, obviously I'm going to say this, but you kind of, as a previous guest said, take the company hat off kind of thing, and it's
no. You got to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, it becomes But
yeah, no. 3 phenomenal cigars. Hats off to all 3 brands.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As I say, very enjoyable experience this afternoon.
Of course. Thank you so much, Alan.
It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen, and I hope to see you soon.
Of course.
We'll see you on Monday.
So we will.
Maybe we get
this time on Monday.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to sit down and do this again. We look forward to it.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
If you guys enjoyed watching or listening to this podcast, please leave a like down below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify if you haven't already. Let us know what you think of the subscription this month. Leave your comments down below. And as always, stay safe and happy earthing. Peace.